Hey everyone, Pastor BJ here, coming to you from Kirkmont Church. This Saturday is October 31st, and in the United States we are celebrating a major holiday. Now, many of you are thinking to yourself, BJ, Halloween. You're talking about Halloween, and you of course would be wrong. I am not talking about Halloween. I am talking about Reformation Day. Across the United States, and indeed across the world, Protestant churches all over the place celebrate on October 31st the inauguration of the Reformation. And since for many of you this is probably either fairly new or somewhat unfamiliar, I thought I would just make a short little video here explaining what Reformation Day is and maybe a little bit about how we as Christians should celebrate it. So, all right, in 1517, in a town called Wittenberg, Germany, a young scholar and monk by the name of Martin Luther nailed 95 theses to the door of All Saints Church. Now, 95 theses, this is kind of a weird scenario for us in the modern world, but basically what was going on here is if somebody wanted to have, among the scholars and monks at the time, wanted to have a discussion about some different issues, what they would do is they would write out these different items and they would nail it to the front door, so that as the folks came in for worship or to do their daily tasks, they would see, hey, Martin Luther wants to talk about these particular things. Now, in this particular case, I don't think Martin Luther knew what he was inaugurating when he did it. But effectively what had happened was he had become very discouraged by some of the things that he was seeing in the Roman Catholic Church. The one thing that was driving him the craziest, and I completely sympathize with him, was the sale of what's called indulgences. In an effort to raise money for the church and some of the building projects that they wanted to complete, the Pope authorized the sale of indulgences, effectively saying that if people paid money to the church, then they would write out a certificate saying that one of their family members could get out of purgatory quicker. And when Martin Luther saw this, of course, he was just angered to his core, and he was also struggling with some of the discrepancies that he was seeing between the dogma of the Catholic Church and what he was reading in Scripture. Most specifically, he was really trying to come to grips with the reality that the Bible is clear that we are saved by grace through faith alone, and the dogma of the Catholic Church was saying otherwise. And so he wanted to discuss this and to talk about it. And when he nailed those 95 theses to the door, he kicked off what would become a globe-changing movement known as the Reformation. And so that's what we're celebrating. We are celebrating this idea that there was corruption in the Church of Christ and that there was this glorious doctrine called grace, that it's by faith alone, not by the works that we bring to the table, that is ultimately our source of salvation. And so I hope you can see that that's something that Christians really ought to be celebrating. And of course, in the Newman household, we don't typically celebrate Halloween. We celebrate Reformation Day. Now, many questions typically will come up whenever I make statements like that. They'll say, BJ, do you think it's sinful to celebrate Halloween? And my typical answer is, well, I don't think so, but it depends. And it depends on what you're celebrating. If what you're saying is we carve pumpkins and we put candles in them and we decorate with fall decorations and we let the kids dress up in fun costumes and we pass out candy to the neighborhood kids, no, that's all well and good. I don't have any struggles with that whatsoever. But without question, if you know anything about the history of Halloween, there are some occultic and dark practices and ideas that go along with Halloween. And so if that's what we're celebrating, then count me out. We don't celebrate those types of things, and indeed no Christian should really celebrate those kinds of things. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what are you celebrating? And Reformation Day gives us a beautiful thing to celebrate. So if the Reformation Day celebration gives us something worthwhile to celebrate, then let's celebrate. Let's celebrate with candy and with costumes and with decorations. But let's make sure we understand that the object of our celebration is important. So here's what we do in the Newman household. One of the things that we spend time doing each October is studying one of the major figures in church history. Now, Reformation provides a lot of characters. We have Calvin and Luther and Zwingli and Knox and so many others, William Tyndale, and just the list could go on. But because October 31st is typically affiliated with what was called the celebration of All Saints' Day, which was typically celebrated on November 1st, you can really just turn this into a celebration of any figure in church history. And so in our house, we will pick one of those characters and we'll spend the entire time studying it. We'll get little kids' books versions, and I'll spend some time doing some homeschool lessons with the kids and just helping them to see, hey, here's how Christians of the past have celebrated their faith, and many have even been willing to die for their faith. But because of what Christ has done, we have hope. And by faith, by grace, through faith alone, we can grasp hold of that and we can emulate their lives. But here's the thing that I want to impress upon you. Because that's what we're celebrating, let's celebrate well. Christians, we have a bad habit of making like B-grade alternatives to a lot of the things that the culture has to offer. And right now, Halloween is a thoroughly commercialized secular holiday that really doesn't mean anything. It's just an excuse to eat candy. It's just an excuse to dress up in costumes. But we don't have to have that empty commercialized version. We can fill it with gospel truth and with joy and with celebration. And so we do let our kids dress up. We in wholesome, appropriate costumes. We don't celebrate death, but we pass out candy to the neighbor. We use that as an excuse to be hospitable. We decorate. We celebrate, and we celebrate vigorously and with seriousness. It's important that we do that. And that's what I would encourage you to do as well. And what I think you'll find is that what Christians offer in terms of celebration far surpasses what an empty American Halloween offers. We have something of substance, and we can fill that void for them and use that as an opportunity to share the gospel with our neighbors who need it. All right, well, I hope I have informed you. I hope I have inspired you. Go and celebrate Reformation Day and be blessed.